Hello and welcome to the CBB Supershow. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85, and Niche Sports Connoisseur. We're back, another episode of the show. We're covering the SEC Conference tonight. Got the banner, the correct banner behind us. I've got this hair situation, man. I haven't had a haircut for 2 months. Time to do something with that. And we are a week away from the college basketball season. We are knee deep in exhibition charity scrimmages. People are panicking. Louisville lost a game against Kentucky Wesleyan tonight. Kentucky Wesleyan, they D2, they produced pretty high level in the past, but it's tough. They're not expected to be a very high level D2 team this year, so that is a rough loss for Louisville. But we're here to talk about the SEC. Give me 1 second here. Cat at the door to the office here. Of course, you would pick this moment to interrupt. So let's get that old kitty inside. There you go, buddy. Get yourself in there. Put yourself in there. Also, I just want to let you guys know, for those that were wondering, we got ourselves a space heater now, so we will no longer be suffering in this frigid Pacific Northwest weather. We are good to go. All right, man. So we've been just, whipping through these previews, plan to whip through the SEC tonight. It's going to be a real fun one. This is a conference that always has plenty of fantasy goodness. We tend to do really, really well during SEC-centric heavy slates. Looking forward to a lot of teams here. There is and just like everyone else, a lot of reloading going on here, a lot of different stuff, a lot of different talent, a lot of guys gone. And I want to start with the Tennessee Volunteers for the purposes of this show. They just had a very, very interesting game against Michigan State yesterday, in which they won 89-88. Let's first start with, Coach Barnes, and this is what he does, man. Rick Barnes. They do so well during the season. You almost feel like, man, this Tennessee team, we need to get a future on them. We need to pick them in our brackets. This is the Final Four squad. They suck us in. Then they get into March and Barnes falters, does something stupid, makes a poor decision on his rotations. They don't call a timeout. They don't foul up three. Mistake. March full of mistakes for Rick Barnes. I admit I am a recovering better of Rick Barnes, and I put real money on him and his teams many times. And you go into the season saying to yourself, I am not, enough is enough. The very definition of insanity, this is enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is really, really important for me not to be on the Tennessee Vols this year. And then they go and they beat Michigan State in a meaningless exhibition game. And even John Rothstein, the Rothbot himself, he's all about the Vols now after he had written them off. And yes, Michigan State, I have a future. Let me just tell you here. I put a future. Let's pull this up. I put a future on Michigan State at plus 625 back on March 16th, 5 p.m., mind you. Plus 625. Just $21. Just, I don't know what I was doing that day. I felt like, hey, they got futures. I love Spartans. I love Sparty. So I have this ticket here. I don't know if you can see this. There we go. Just a little baby ticket. But that just shows you how interested in Michigan State I am, right? Like I am all, hey, Taylor, what's up, buddy? So I'm all about the Spartans. Love them. Love the Spartans. And I know technically a meaningless exhibition game, but shit, man. 89-88. Like the Spartans, they showed out, right? Tyson Walker, 22 points. Jaden Akins, 12 points, 6 times. That's intriguing. AJ Hoggard, 14 points, only 2 assists. It was a little lackluster for my liking, but he'll be there. Matty Sissoko wasn't great, got into some foul trouble. 5 points, 4 rebounds. Malik Hall, double-double, 14 and 11, 7 fouls because it was an exhibition. But big time, got to the line, looked really good, had a steal. The freshmen, they didn't play as much as maybe people thought they might in that particular game. Jeremy Fears, Xavier Booker, Cohen Carr, those guys, they didn't do a whole lot. They were okay, right? They did fine. 18 minutes, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 8 minutes for Booker. They're going to be fine. I love the Spartans team, still highly involved in them. But just making that point that, hey, I've got money since months ago, right when the season wasn't even quite over yet on Michigan State, and I'm very high on this team. And the Vols go in there without 2 of their guards, 2 of their key pieces at guard, because we know Zakai Zeigler coming off an injury, Santiago Vescovi always dealing with ailments. Neither one of them played. And they gave it to Michigan State. The 2 transfers that we're going to talk about were phenomenal. Let's circle back around here, get into the roster, who's gone, who's returning, all that stuff. Now, Oliver Mkwa off to Michigan. That's a fairly big loss, but I think they'll be okay. Julian Phillips never really got going. Pretty raw in the NBA now. Would have loved to have seen him return, but hey, you're going to get that NBA money. Go get it. Tyreek Key, who started out hot, but just the SEC conference was too much for him. And then Euros Plastic, gone, just a role player. But they bring in some really, really strong players. Now, the freshman group, JP Estrella, Freddie Dion, and Cameron Carr, all will have their moments down the line. They're not going to be fantasy relevant right away. It will take time, injuries, even next year. But they're there. The 2 pieces that come in via the transfer portal that were huge, and they also had, Chris Ledlam, the kid from St. John's, who we talked about last night, ended up backing out of Tennessee. That hurts them a little bit, but ultimately they're going to be just fine. Dalton Connect from Northern Colorado and Justin Gainey from USC Upstate. I had USC Upstate picked as a winner of their conference tournament. I really thought USC Upstate had a ridiculously good chance to win the Big South in that game. They pushed UNC Asheville, only lost by 4. Earlier in the season, they beat Asheville, they beat Longwood. Like, that was a really good team, and Jordan Gainey was a big reason why, probably the primary reason why. So he comes to Tennessee ready to kind of jump right into this alpha role. While he was at Upstate, 28% usage rate, 31% shot rate, 3.5% steal rate, shot about 33% from long range. Want that to be a little bit higher, but still technically only a junior. Going to be a guy that can go get points for this Vols team. And clearly, looking at what he was able to do against Michigan State, 20 points, 4 of 7 from long range, 4 of 8 from the foul line. Once you did better there, Mr. Gainey. 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 1 block, 2 steals, 6 turnovers. That's okay. It was plus 10 on the day, even with 6 turnovers. What? Jordan Gainey is going to be awesome. Then you got Dalton Connect. This was the kid that I really wanted the North Carolina Tar Heels to go and get. I felt like this was the perfect fit. When they were at their best, Brady Manick hitting threes, doing things for them, like they needed the Manick replacement. Pete Nance was the hope to be the replacement. It didn't work out. Dalton Connect, tailor-made to be that replacement. 38% three-point shooter, averaged over 20 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, just like the preeminent total Brady Manick replacement, where this team, when they're at their best, they had him just rolling, right? Just absolutely rolling. And this was the guy they needed. Looking at his efficiency rates, and he played on a team, a Northern Colorado team that really should have been a lot better. Steve Smiley, who's the coach of them and still is, really disappointing to turn in a 12-20 record when he had Dalton Connect, Dalen Kuntz, who was a Colorado transfer himself at one time, Matt Johnson, Riley Abercrombie. Like, this roster, and Rob Abercrombie played for Rice, Boise State, been around the block. That should have been a much better team. But Dalton Connect, 27% usage rate, 31% shot rate, again, 38, 39% three-point shooter, 22% defensive rebounding rate, drew almost 5 fouls per 40. He was really, really good. And what did he do in the tune-up game here against the Spartans? Well, he absolutely wrecked shop. 28 actual points, 8 of 16 shooting, 3 of 9 from downtown, 9 of 11 at the foul line, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 34 minutes of action. He and Gainey both played 34 minutes. Josiah Jordan James, Triple J, as we affectionately called him, played 30. Jemai Myshak, who's going to have a much bigger role, played 29. Jonas Adu played 29. Freddie Dion played 14. The freshman, Toba Waka, 17. And then Estrella and Carr, both under 5. Cade Phillips played just 8, did very, very little. This looks like a very short bench. Once they get their guards back with Ziegler, Vescovi, we're looking at this team as a very strong, top 3-4 seed at worst, maybe even, upside of a 2 seed, depending on how things break. But this is really like we're looking at a starting lineup potentially of Ziegler, Vescovi, Connect, Triple J, and Jordan Gainey. And yes, that's a little small. Connect playing like the 4 or maybe the 3-4 at 6'6". Triple J can play the 4. Maybe a small ball 5, or maybe they have to start Jonas Idu, which is fine as he's 6'11". He can play that 5, and then you just bring one of Vescovi, which you probably can't bring him off the bench, but I don't know how you bench Gainey either. So maybe Triple J becomes a bench piece for you. It's a good problem to have, or maybe they want to take it slow with Ziegler. But at this point, Idu, Gainey, and Connect have to be starters and are going to play big, big roles on this Vols team. So get ready to be disappointed by Rick Barnes and the Vols like usual every season, but their regular season, Barnes is usually a pretty strong performer. It's not until we cross into the new year and into February before things start to really go sideways. So as long as we know that, we make the money on them now from November, December, January, and then we start backing off in February, we'll be okay. Of course, when they're the 1 seed in the SEC and they've lost only 2 games and they're cruising, it's going to be like, this is finally the year I can bet on the Tennessee Volunteers in March and not be disappointed. Honey, give me our daughter's college fun. We're going all in on Rick Barnes. Trust me, this man is going to be legit. And then when he proceeds to lose in the first round, I will be getting a 3rd job. So that's kind of how that'll shake up. But no, this Vols team, they look great. And they still have really young players around that can learn under these guys. But expect a jump up from Jonas Idu. They can still take it slow with Tobawaka. He could actually start as well at times. DJ Jefferson, somebody who's going to step up. Mayshak as a really strong defender. So this is just going to be a really good team. They would have been even better with Ledlum, but honestly, they're going to be just fine. Really good roster, really good team. Love what I'm seeing from this Tennessee squad. All right, let's move over to the LSU Tigers because they played a game today, and I want to bring up their box score as well. With the LSU Tigers, Matt McMahon in his 2nd season loses KJ Williams, who was fantastic last season, transferring up from Murray. Adam Miller gone off to the old Pac-12 there. Cam Hayes, Justice Hill, and Justice Williams all gone. Jalen Cook transfers back to LSU from Tulane. Started at LSU, went to Tulane, back to LSU. Will require a waiver since he's not a grad transfer and he's a 2-time transfer. Not looking good there for him. So unfortunately, probably not going to play. Will Baker transfers in from Nevada. Jordan Wright transfers in from Vandy. That's great. Carlos Stewart from Santa Clara lived in the shadow of our guy there for a bit, but Carlos Stewart, people when they watch Santa Clara probably didn't notice Carlos Stewart as much as they should have. When you have a guy like Brandon Podziemski, it makes it difficult, but Stewart was a 42% 3-point shooter, 25% shot rate, real strong defender, highest steal rate on the team, and really probably better than Keyshawn Justice for most of the season, Jaden Bediako and Parker Braun. That was a very, very solid starting 5 that they rolled there. Pod's definitely the guy, but Stewart is going to fit in really, really nice with this program. Damian Collins from Kentucky, Hunter Dean from George Washington, and their freshman Corey Chest. So looking at it, the returners, Tyrell Ward, Derek Fountain, Trey Hamilton, Mawani Wilkinson, Jalen Reed. Those are all your primary guys. they're looking good. You got Mike Williams coming in. Oh, Mikey. I don't know what we're going to see if Jalen Cook doesn't play, but there are enough guards, there's enough scores on this LSU team that they can definitely still compete at a high level. I don't know that it'll turn into a bunch of wins in conference, but looking at it, I think they will be solid. So the starting five that they rolled with in this game here, and it was against Louisiana Christian, so consider the opponent, right? But Jalen Reed started at the 5, Will Baker, Jordan Wright, Mike Williams, and Carlos Stewart. Carlos Stewart had 12 points, made all 4 of his shots, 2 rebounds, 8 assists, and a steal in 26 minutes. Very, very solid. Mike Williams, 4 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 block, and a steal. Should be a solid source of peripherals and looks like he's going to be getting those guard minutes right away. Jordan Wright, 22 points. You know how good he could be at Vandy. Had that guard forward eligibility. We love Jordan Wright. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 steals. Count them. 5-time Booker T, 5 steals and a block. Will Baker, 14 points, 5 rebounds. Jalen Reed, 11 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Damian Collins, man. Let's talk about Damian Collins. In just 17 minutes, had foul trouble, but 15 points on 10 shot attempts, 7 rebounds, had assist, had a block. Really, really good stuff in 17 minutes. As a bench piece, he's going to be somebody who's cheap and somebody's going to have a high fantasy point per minute number in the system for LSU. I feel pretty confident in that. Mwani Wilkinson, who's been around for a while at this point, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block. Tyrell Ward, 19 points. I love Tyrell Ward. Give him a chance. 5 assists, 2 rebounds. Corey Chess, 9 points. Ada Ben-Howian, 9 points as well. So everybody got in on the action here against this Louisiana Christian team. So we need to take it with a grain of salt. But looking at it, the Mike Williams kid definitely looking like he's going to get those guard minutes. There's a lot to be said about a freshman coming in and playing such an important position. But he is definitely somebody that I think they're going to have to kind of turn the reins over to quicker than maybe they would have liked. But having Carlos Stewart and Jordan Wright around him, and Will Baker to a lesser extent, which are quality veterans that they can be leaning on. I think Jordan Wright really kind of turned heads tonight. I think people are going to be really excited about him. And then, just without Jalen Cook, they're going to have to rely on some of these other guys who ordinarily maybe wouldn't have been able to play as much. Trey Hannibal was out with a illness, by the way. He'll get some minutes as well. So LSU definitely a team to pay attention to, and I think is going to be better than advertised here. Derek Fountain, also a guy who's increased his level of production and efficiency with each season that he has been around. All right, moving right along here, let's talk about the Texas A&M Aggies. Buzz Williams in season 5. Now, a lot of people picking Texas A&M to be a highly ranked, top 25 team, win the conference. They lost Dexter Dennis and Andre Gordon. Gordon never really got anything going. Dexter Dennis is a pretty tough loss, but Jace Carter transferring in from Illinois, Chicago, he's going to have a solid role. Eli Lawrence from Middle Tennessee State and Wildens Levesque from UMass originally started out at South Carolina. Returning Wade Taylor, 36% three-point shooter, 16 points per game. Very high fantasy point per minute player, has been for the duration of his career. Even when he was coming off the bench in his freshman season, he was still a reliable value option we could look at. Tyrese Radford back for his final season. Radford's one of those guys, always a little bit on the cheap side. The optimizers and projections usually push him. He ends up being a highly rostered player. Not rostering him doesn't usually hurt us. There's been a few times, but normally he's chalk that is not quite as bad as a Jermaine Cuisinart of Oregon, but he's not really good chalk. And I'm wondering what people are going to be doing with him this year. But I think he is fine. I like Manny Obaseki, to really take a step forward. If he can be healthy, shot almost 40% from long range. This is the year for Obaseki to really bust out and be that player I know he can be, taking that Dexter Dennis role. I have a lot of faith in him. Henry Coleman returns as a very inconsistent option. Way back when he started out at Duke, the talent's there, the upside's there. We just need to see that consistency from Henry Coleman III. Julius Marble back as a solid value/role player. And then Eli Lawrence, who averaged 12 points, shot 34%. Jace Carter averaged 16 points, shot 31% from long range, also 7 rebounds a game. Both of those guys will have solid roles in this offense. Anderson Garcia, really efficient player, really high level fantasy point per minute player too. Doesn't ever really get that many minutes. Ended up averaging 16 and a half minutes last year, but there were so many games where he would play 8 to 12 minutes and have 8 to 12 fantasy points. And I know that doesn't sound like anything special, but we're talking about a guy who's min priced to 4K, 4.5, and he's certainly, as pricing tightens, somebody we can look at. And I think he will deserve a better or bigger role, I should say, on this team this year, considering that the wing spot that Dennis leaves vacant is going to be, kind of a really important position for them to fill. And Garcia is definitely somebody who can do so. So I'm hoping for a bigger role for him as well. Hayden Hefner and Solomon Washington returning. Solomon Washington, a lot of people, looking for him to make a step forward. And then Wildens Levesque, only played 20 minutes a game at UMass, showed flashes of being a double-double guy in some games for South Carolina. Couldn't really get it going for UMass, but a 7-footer can always use that, and somebody who can play, valuable minutes at the 5 for this team. So Texas A&M definitely looks like a squad capable of winning the SEC. They're not particularly exciting to me, but they're kind of a no-nonsense club that could definitely do some damage here. And I think they'll mow people down, and they'll do it in such a way where it kind of sucks the enjoyability out of watching them, but also kind of sucks the fantasy viability out of it too, because I think defensively they'll be a problem for most teams. But I also think offensively, we're not going to see, them support 3, 4, 5 guys making value. They'll support one guy one game. They might support 2, maybe a rare occasion where 3 go over 5x. But I just think this is a team that we may end up avoiding more often than not, which was pretty much the case last season. But I love Manny Obasake, so just look out for him and stepping up as a guy that should be able to do some serious damage, assuming he gets minutes. And he spent the summer just shooting, because I think he has a lot of potential. All right. Let's move on to the next one here. Alabama Crimson Tide. I love Alabama. Love what Nate Oates does. Brandon Miller gone. That's always tough, of course, but they will be okay. Trust me on this. Noah Clowney, Javon Quinterly, Charles Bediako, who we love, Jaden Bradley, and Amari Burnett all gone. So that's a ton of production out the door, right? That's well over 40 points a game, just gone. But they're able to retool, reload. They bring in freshman Sam Walters, who had a freaking phenomenal exhibition scrimmage game, scored like 29 or 30 real points. Granted, they were missing a ton of their regulars, so we have to reel it in a little bit. But clearly, Sam Walters showed that he could be a force when given minutes. Mohamed Diabite from Putnam, and then Chris Parker. So those are the freshmen coming in. And Jaron Stevenson. The transfers that are coming in are substantial. Cal State Fullerton's Latrell Wrightsell Jr. All he did while he was there was average 16 points a game, 4.5 rebounds, and shot 39% from long range. Fits this system quite well. Aaron Estrada from Hofstra, who did have experience back when, and for the Oregon Ducks. Really big player for Hofstra, over 20 points per game, 37% three-point shooter, 5 rebounds per game, 4 assists. He is just so tailor-made to run this Alabama system of just run and gun, run and gun, run and gun. Defensively, he averaged almost 2 steals per game. He is going to be phenomenal in this. We take shots at the rim or we take 3-pointers. That's what we do. We're going to push the pace. We're going to be violent. We're going to be physical on defense. This is just such a great spot for Aaron Estrada. You look at his steals rate last year, almost 3%, 30% shot rate, 30% usage rate. Assist rate of 24%, 81% free throw shooter. There's just no way Aaron Estrada does not go completely ape shiz on everybody in the SEC. I'm feeling very, very confident in that, and I think he's going to be phenomenal. What's his price going to be? Probably pretty expensive because, they're going to look at his numbers from Hofstra, and they're going to certainly jack that up. But I feel pretty confident that he's going to be that dude. Now, there was a game yesterday between Wake Forest and Alabama. By the way, plug Cameron Hildreth. I know this isn't the ACC show, but I talked about my boy 38 points against Alabama, 16 of 19 from the foul line. Let's freaking go. Also, Hunter Salas scored 27, by the way. I think we're going to be in a situation where guards are going to slap this team around for Alabama, but they're going to also score a ton of points. Let's take a look at what Aaron Estrada did against Wake Forest, shall we? 24 points, 10 of 20 shooting, only 1 of 5 from 3, but he got to the rim a lot. 6 rebounds, 3 assists, did turn the ball over 5 times. I don't care about that. 2 steals. Aaron Estrada, he's going to put this team on his back. Sam Walters followed up his big 29-point showing with 13 points, 4 of 6 from long range in 15 minutes. He's going to be a dude that comes off the bench and just scores. He's going to have the green light to fire threes. Now, Latrell Wrightsell off the bench had 8 points, did play 29 minutes. Jaron Stevenson actually got the start but played just 18. Wrightsell off the bench played 29, was solid. 8 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. So Wrightsell is going to definitely contribute, no doubt. The returners were, I got to talk about Grant Nelson, of course, right? Grant Nelson. Now, I'm not the biggest Grant Nelson fan in the world, certainly not a hater of Grant Nelson, but I do think when you look at a guy who dominated for North Dakota State, you have to really put things in perspective about his competition. Now, he's tailor-made to fit well in this Alabama system, but I also feel like he's going to struggle, and it's going to take time for him to get acclimated when they're playing upper-tier competition. Now, I'm going to, again, I'm not a Grant Nelson hater, but I think we're going to have an opportunity here to kind of slap the industry around early on. And why do I think that? Well, the reason is when people are going to be rostering Alabama slates, Grant Nelson is going to be the guy that I think people roster in droves. That seems like a really big inevitability to me. I think that we're going to have a situation where we're going to get Aaron Estrada at like 8K, and people are going to be like, but Grant Nelson, he's just a unicorn. He's the best ever. Maybe he's priced at 7K instead. And people are going to go there in droves, and he's going to be good. Like, look at his efficiency numbers from last year. 5.5% block rate, drew 6 fouls per 40, 30% shot rate, 30% usage rate, combined rebounding rate over 35%. Like, it's all there. Draw 6 fouls per 40. He's great. Shot 28% from long range, so he'll have to work on that to be at Bama. But let's go into games where he faced what I would consider to be at least tier A competition. And to end his season last year in the Summit against Oral Roberts, they shut him down. 9 points, 5 rebounds. They did a phenomenal job of containing him, especially when he scored 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight games prior to that of 20 or more points. All right, so let's go to Kansas, and that's a tough team anyways, right? 11 points, 9 rebounds. That's probably pretty solid against the Kansas team, right? New Mexico, 3 points, got completely shut down by the New Mexico front court, was in foul trouble the whole time. Arkansas, 17 points, better, 6 rebounds, got into foul trouble there as well, had 4. Was only able to play 21 minutes in that blowout loss. But once he started playing the Montanas of the world, the Western Illinois, 35 and 16, Oral Roberts the first time, 21 and 6, North Dakota, 36 and 7, like big time numbers. But I'm certainly concerned about that when he plays upper tier competition. When you go to the prior year, he was obviously way less polished 2 years ago. Arizona completely shut down. UNLV completely shut down. Creighton completely shut down. So we have to give him his props, but we also have to really kind of reel this in and think, what's a realistic number? Now, against a tough Wake Forest team, he fouled out in 29 minutes, had 11 points, did take 11 shots, hit 2 threes, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, 1 steal. I could see this happening. Now, maybe not the first. Let's look at Alabama's schedule. I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I really want to work through this. Now, their first game is against Morehead State. So we can use Grant Nelson. If he's going to be chalked, then obviously we don't want to be too reckless. Then Indiana State, then South Alabama, then Mercer. Things don't start to get possibly difficult until November 24th when they face Ohio State. And then they have a string of games where they play Ohio State, Clemson, Purdue, Creighton, and Arizona. There's a game in there wedged between on December 4th against Arkansas State. But that is a very, very difficult non-con schedule to end with. The day before Christmas Eve, they face Eastern Kentucky before they go into conference play after a game against Liberty. So we're going to have an opportunity with this Alabama team, I think, Because going up against Ohio State or even Clemson for that matter, I could see Grant Nelson really struggling with the physicality of those programs. Meanwhile, Aaron Estrada, for maybe a little more salary, way less ownership, is not going to back down, is not going to struggle, is not going to be afraid one iota. Yes, I use the word iota against upper tier competition. So that's my spiel there about Aaron Estrada. Now, returners for Alabama, still interesting. Mark Sears, who hasn't played yet in the exhibition, definitely going to take that step forward or look more like the Ohio version that we saw him a couple of seasons ago. Shot about 35% from long range last year, 12.5 points per game. He disappeared more often than you like, but Mark Sears is definitely a legit player in this offense. Rylan Griffin returns for year 2. Nick Pringle is back. Nick Pringle and Rylan Griffin, both guys who had slate-shattering performances at random times. Now they're going to be able to play more minutes and contribute to this team far more with Bediako gone, Clowney gone. Like, they're going to be relied on. Look at what they did. Rylan Griffin in 25 minutes, 8 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, and 2 steals. I think that's going to be the type of stat line Griffin puts up with regularity. So if we're talking sub 5.5, we can kind of pencil Griffin in for 4x. If he hits 6K or above, we may back off. Nick Pringle, 13 points, 9 rebounds, and a block in 28 minutes there against Wake Forest. Very solid. A lot of price dependency stuff there with those two, but they do have high fantasy point per minute numbers. I like both of those guys quite a bit. And then Mo Wag, who comes in there. He played let's see, fair amount of minutes here. Just 10, actually. Got into early foul trouble, 4 rebounds, and that was about it. Moag has a lot of upside, a lot of chatter about him coming into this one, but we'll have to see if he can develop further. But that is the Alabama Crimson Tide squad. The Crimson Tide, they have dudes, and Estrada is going to just be a guy I'm constantly plugging in. I don't think he'll qualify for Posh Play of the Day level, but if we see like we're into 2-3 slates and people are not rostering Estrada, one thing I want to do this year is track ownership a little bit closer on a slate to slate basis, or maybe big slates like Tuesday, Saturday, stuff like that, and then kind of have a piece or a show about it to kind of clue us into what the rest of the industry is doing or what people are looking at. I think that could be helpful for us. All right, moving right along here, we have the Arkansas Razorbacks, the Hogs. You may remember I had a bet with one of our super fans, big Arkansas fan. It was either a year or two ago. I did the, their hog call. This is an Arkansas team that's coming into it with a lot of hype. Eric Musselman, a fine coach, brings in talent year over year. They go ahead and lose Ricky Council, Anthony Black, Nick Smith, Jordan Walsh, Makel Mitchell. Most programs would really struggle, but they just retool. And before the transfer portal became such an explosion that it is with all this talent, he was doing it before them. It's really just the mayor, Fred Hoiberg, with that Iowa State team a few years ago with, Niang, Georges Niang, DeAndre Kane, Melvin Edgem, going deep on you guys, Draft Street days. But Musselman, known as like the real king of the transfer portal these days. Brings in Khalif Battle from Temple, Tramon Mark from Houston, L. Ellis from Louisville, Jeremiah Davenport from Cincinnati, Denaje Harris from Southern Miss, Chandler Lawson from Memphis. Still gets the freshman Layden Blocker, would be phenomenal, would start on a lot of programs. Probably won't start here, but he could on a lot. And Bayfall from Senegal, who had some trouble early on getting with the teams a little bit later than the rest. Still bring back Joseph Pinion, Jalen Graham, and Makai Mitchell, and of course, Trevon Brazil and Devontae Davis. This perimeter is absolutely freaking loaded. First look for me is, damn, there is too many mouths to feed on this team. You get a healthy Brazil in there who was like the best fantasy asset before pre-injury last year. Freaking amazing. Devo Davis has the kind of been an enigma when it comes to DFS purposes. He'll have this string of games where he's completely unfadable. The price rises, and then suddenly he disappears for stretches and gets a 1x score. I still feel pretty damn worried about Devo Davis on like a main team standpoint, but he's probably one of the best GPP options in this entire conference because of his high upside. Makai Mitchell, no Makel, first time not playing with his brother, I think, ever. He should get a ton of minutes and a big role with this program. Bayfall, I think, has a lot of Brazil-like qualities to him as far as being able to defend guards, centers, forwards. We'll see how much time he actually gets. Tremont Mark, also a very good defender. He is, was next in line to take over Houston, but ends up going to Arkansas. I think he'll get that opportunity to be a big-time scorer there, but I think it's going to be like game by game. Like, hey, Mark's going to take over this game. Hey, next game, Khalif Battle is going to take over this game. I mean, it's just L. Ellis, isolation, can hunt the shot, kind of hunt shots with the best of them. What is Jeremiah Davenport's role on this team? What is Chandler Lawson's role on this team? Like, this is just really, really tough for me initially. I'm excited about the options, surely, but I just think there's going to be a lot of cannibalization when it comes to, the fantasy production with this team. And it just seems like we're going to be dealing with some frustrations, at least until the pecking order gets more established. Let's pull up the game from a couple of days ago where they played Purdue. They did beat Purdue in that one, 81-77. Zach Edey fouled out in 24 minutes. Well, I don't need to get into that. It's not the Big Ten show. But Javon Brazil in that one, 15-5, 3 steals and a block. That's the kind of stuff he's going to give you, right? 31 minutes. L. Ellis, 10 shots, 12 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 27 minutes. I worry about those kind of stat lines. Devo Davis in 22 minutes, 2 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds. Chandler Lawson, 10 points, 3 blocks, 3 steals. Going to be a solid source of peripherals, perhaps. Tremont Mark, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, 1 steal. To me, Tremont Mark is the best, maybe not the best player on the team, but for DFS purposes, the reason why you're here, he's the best by far to me. Khalif Battle off the bench, 12-5. Joseph Pinion was not effective. Layden Blocker had 6 points in 8 minutes. Again, it's going to take him time. Mekhi Mitchell fouled out. That's kind of par for the course with him. 4 points, 3 rebounds, 2 steals and a block. And then Jeremiah Davenport, just 11 minutes. Jeremiah Davenport's going to be the odd man out. It's kind of puzzling to me why he would have come here. Jalen Graham, kind of the same thing, a year ago. But look at that LLS stat line, 12, 3, and 3. It's not horrible. It's not. But it's not going to be enough for the prices that these guys are going to be. And I have a really strong suspicion because a lot of the alphas from other teams, like Khalif Battle, like L. Ellis, come over to this roster and their prices are going to be high and they're going to be priced like they're still in that alpha role. Maybe Tremont Mark is a little less because he was more of a secondary option for Houston. Maybe we have some value there. Maybe Chandler Lawson's 4K and we can look and be like, look at 6 blocks, 6 steals. Like, whoa, here, look at this. I have my concerns with this team, not because they're not good, but because I think there's too many options. I can tell you I will be tilting my face off if I roster L. Ellis and he gives me 17 fantasy points at 8K, only to watch, Tremont Mark put up 40. That will honestly tilt me. And then speaking of tilt, I tilt with the best of them in years past. Last year, I was a very calm, reserved version of myself. Didn't tilt nearly enough. Usually after the first wave of lock games, I had to disappear because I do have kids, young kids at that, have to do stuff with them. Well, I don't know what the hell they're thinking. I got to spend time with them. But I've just been really busy. I'm going to try and be around more, but I'm going to put my tilting to good use. The tilt reserves are full. In fact, they're overfilling. And you'll know some of the best turnarounds we've ever had is when I'm absolutely tilting hard on Discord, on Twitter, saying, well, this guy doesn't have it today, 2 minutes in. It confuses a lot of the new subs, but if you've been with me for several years, you know how tilting has done for us. I'm bringing it back. We're bringing it back old school this season, guys. All right, let's move on to the next team. Cruising right along, the Mississippi State Bulldogs, losing Will McNair, Eric Reed, Tyler Stevenson, Andrew Taylor transfers in from Marshall, Josh Hubbard, an exciting freshman, more on him in a second. Transfer Trey Fort from non-D1 school, Salt Lake Community College, Jaquan Scott, who's going to have a role, and Jimmy Bell transfers in from West Virginia. Also, Adrian Myers, who is a freshman who actually can be a gunner, total scoring off the bench. I love Adrian Myers. Might not be a DFS option right away, but somebody to keep an eye on. Now, this club they have some intriguing pieces. Unfortunately, they will be without Tolu Smith, who did get injured in a practice, and that is significant news. That hurts. But they do have Shaquille Moore, Deshaun Davis, DJ Jeffries, Cameron Matthews, all returning. Sean Murphy as well. Sean Jones. They've got pieces that are certainly accustomed to this system now, gelled with each other, and there's going to be continuity with this roster. But no Tolu Smith is really, really going to be tough. Let's take a look at theirs because we have these accessible to us now. Let's pull up. And by the way, I mentioned it last night. If you're not familiar with Stat Broadcast, you really need to get familiar with Stat Broadcast because it is going to be your lifesaver. It's the way to pull up scores past and present for quick reference. Obviously, Ken Palm as well, but this is just the quickest way here. All right, Mississippi State. I know I have their box score on lock here. All right, they played a very solid Southern Miss squad. Southern Miss only lost by 6. It was 60-54 in that one. DJ Jeffries in 33 minutes, 11.7 rebounds, 2 assists. Shaquille Moore played 30 minutes, had 8 points, 5 rebounds. Cameron Matthews played 30 minutes, 9.6 rebounds, 4 steals. Deshaun Davis played 28 minutes, 4 assists. Really wasn't that effective. And then Jimmy Bell played 20 minutes as a starter, 2 points, 9 rebounds. Now, off the bench, Trey Fort, Sean Jones, Jaquan Scott. Okay, Jaquan Scott actually did well, 9 points, 9 rebounds. That's kind of, something to look at. Adrian Myers didn't play. Josh Hubbard off the bench, 22 minutes, took 12 shots, 13 points, just 1 rebound, but 12 shots. He's going to be a probably near min price option. Maybe he doesn't start because of, upperclassmen like Shaquille Moore, Cameron Matthews, Deshaun Davis having to get that start. But Josh Hubbard is going to work his way into a role very, very quickly. He's already been talked about as a guy that's going to be relied upon heavily on offense. And you see from those shot selection and that shot amount that he took, the coach speak there is looking to be true so far, at least very early in the season. Hubbard, scoring machine. Only 5'10", has that mighty mouse in him, but 4,367 total points scored in high school, which was a state record where he played. He's going to be immediately a factor. Myers, who I really like as a shooter, is going to take more time defensively, especially. So he might not get as minutes as I would like to see. But Hubbard, Josh Hubbard, that's going to be the sneak of this roster. I used to love Deshaun Davis when he's at Oregon State. I wanted my Huskies to go get him. He was okay last year, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him or a struggling Shaquille Moore get ousted for this Josh Hubbard kid very, very early, as well as Andrew Taylor, who didn't play in the exhibition game against Southern Miss, but is a guy who can absolutely load up a box score, double-double, triple-double threat during his time at Marshall. All right, moving on to the next program, we have the Kentucky Wildcats. The Wildcats, they have taken the best guard prospect of the last 20 years in Boogie Fland for next season. Remember that name. I'm sad about it, but I'll give it to Coach Cal and the Kentucky program. They continue to recruit. Oscar Tshiebwe, Jacob Toppin, Kaysen Wallace, Severe Wheeler, Chris Livingston, and C.J. Frederick all out the door. So they will replace them with Trey Mitchell, who comes in from West Virginia, and a plethora of freshmen. DJ Wagner, Dewan's son, the prize of the class coming in. Aaron Bradshaw, also from Camden, played with DJ Wagner, an absolute stud. Justin Edwards from Emotep, an absolute stud. Reed Shepard, solid. Robert Dillingham from Overtime Elite, a stud. And then the kid from Croatia, Zvonimir Ivisic. It's the best I got for that one. They do bring back Antonio Reeves, which is crucial. He was off campus, then he was on campus. He's good to go playing this summer. Without Reeves, it would have been a freshman and sophomore dominated team with Trey Mitchell. And as you know, the college basketball landscape has kind of shifted from a roster of all one and dones. Nobody told Calipari, I guess. And you need that veteran presence on your team, at least a few positions, usually guards, to have success. So getting Antonio Reeves back in there to help kind of control things and get these young players in check is going to be great. Now, Kentucky over the last few years, typically they kind of stumble out the gate. It takes time for them to gel, the youngsters to get used to the collegiate speed of the game. And then we see after Christmas, they usually go on a hot streak. They kind of dominate in January, and they kind of then they falter a little bit, and they just get into the tournament, and then they could win a game or two. So expect a similar trajectory for Kentucky. I think there'll be a lot of excitement for guys like Edwards and Wagner and Bradshaw and Dillingham, but look for a little bit of inconsistency. Of course, there'll be probably some chemistry issues because Trey Mitchell and Antonio Reeves should be getting the majority of the shots, not just because they're upperclassmen, but because they know how to score at this level. But I have a feeling that the younger kids hunting their shots and it's going to be tough at first, like developing that pecking order for Kentucky. And that's pretty typical of how they do things in this program. They do have two sophomores coming back, Adu Tiero and Agana Enya. So Adu Tiero is an interesting prospect and somebody I think could turn into a fairly decent shooter. But he's going to continue to be recruited over every year. So I don't know where that leaves him with his role. But we're talking about, three guys who could be top 5 picks in this roster. So while there'll be that chemistry issues I'm talking, there's going to be production everywhere. Justin Edwards is a very good scorer. Somebody who's going to put up a ton of fantasy points. Aaron Bradshaw, somebody who, can shoot, tough to guard, kind of that Euro style of play with being able to knock down shots and defend the post. You don't have too many 7-footers that can kind of do that. So that's intriguing for Bradshaw. Obviously Wagner, he's an absolute monster. That every program in the country wanted him. Ended up not going to Louisville, which is looking like it's going to be the death of that program. There's a lot to like here. Reed Shepard, the son of Jeff Shepard, who also played for Kentucky, should be able to play some guard minutes there. But honestly, Trey Mitchell, this is the guy that needs to get the rock. And when Kentucky had some of their better years, they had that veteran presence in the low post, right? Obviously Oscar the last couple of years, but remember Nick Richards and EJ Montgomery playing quite well a few years ago before the COVID year, and after they really did well. Reed Travis, when he transferred in from Stanford, he had a damn good season for them. That team ended up going to the second weekend of the tournament and losing to the Auburn team of destiny, if you will, as a 2 seed that had PJ Washington on it as well. So they do really well when they have players like that. So I'm expecting a pretty damn big season for Trey Mitchell, no doubt. Antonio Reeves, obviously I could see him playing angry, which isn't a bad thing at all. And kind of taking games over, defense, frustrating the young kids, and Reeves having to go out there and get a basket. That's going to be his role. So I feel a lot more positive about Kentucky with Reeves than without. Still think it's going to take them time. All right, the Florida Gators, year 2 under Todd Golden. No Colin Castleton. Very good player for us. Kyle Lofton, always super cheap. Just never knew, it was never that St. Bonaventure Kyle Lofton that we wanted. Quasi Reeves transferring out. Alex Fudge, who has all the upside in the world. I think he will make a fine NBA player eventually. Trey Bonham, Miriam Jones, all gone. They do retool. Micah Hanlogden from Marshall. Tyree Samuel from Seton Hall. Zyron Pullen from UC Riverside. Julian Rishwan, super role player from San Francisco. EJ Jarvis from Yale. And Walter Clayton Jr. from Iona. That is who I thought St. John's really needed coming over from Iona. Instead of Dennis Jenkins, but Walter Clayton comes home to play for Florida, where he's going to be a big-time factor. Clayton averaged 17 points, shot 43% from long range. Tyree Samuel, 11-6 while at Seton Hall. The 7'1" specimen of a player, Micah Hanlogden, 10 rebounds a game a season ago. Filling in that Colin Castleton role, averaged almost 2.5 blocks. Certainly like him. Rishwan, not really going to affect the box score too much, just play solid minutes. Zion Pullen, an 18-point-per-game scorer a season ago, 40% from long range. Denzel Aberdeen, an intriguing sophomore that returns. As far as the rest of them, Alex Schmizik, He returns as well. Not my favorite, but he had splashes last year when given minutes. But Will Richard, who is a 40% three-point shooter, returns, and Riley Kugel, who is probably most people's pick from Florida or the conference itself to have a massive breakout season, to the point where this might be the last year for Kugel. He'll have himself an opportunity to make the NBA draft depending how his season goes. Average 10 points per game, 3 rebounds, 38% three-point shooter. But once they decided to get him big minutes, he just kind of took off and never looked back. So Will Richard and Riley Kugel, two really important players that are coming back to this program. Kugel held his own, especially once he started getting those heavy minutes. So he's going to fit in quite well with these new pieces. Walter Clayton there to take some of that scoring pressure off. Zion Pullen, the same thing. I really like the pairing of Walter Clayton and Riley Kugel in the backcourt. That's going to be a really fun group. Those guys are going to be able to shoot lights out. There are 4 different players on this team that shot almost 40% from long range, and including E.J. Jarvis, who transfers in from Yale, shot right about 41% himself. So you got 5 guys there capable of shooting lights out. This Florida team is certainly they're going to be good. Replacing a guy like Castleton is never easy, but I think Hangloten, young still, going to be able to fit well in this Golden system. Tyrese Samuel, somebody who very good at rebounding, very good defensively. They're going to be able to defend well, this group. The main thing is the scoring, which I thought, pre-Walter Clayton looked like it could be a problem. Post-Walter Clayton, I really don't see that being an issue. This rotation really looks strong. You're talking Clayton, Kugel, Richard, Samuel, Handlogen, Pullen, maybe Aberdeen, Jarvis, 8 guys deep. They do have the 7-foot freshman Alex Condon coming in. There's a lot to like for this Florida roster, and you got to give Golden credit for sure. All right, moving on to the Auburn Tigers. I don't know how you guys feel about Bruce Pearl. Say what you will about Bruce Pearl in season 10. I love him. He's great for DFS purposes. Hey, how about them Hogs, Corey? You might have just came in after I got done talking about Arkansas. Actually referenced you, not by name, but the time we made a bet. Can't remember what the bet was. You probably do, but I lost it, and I had to do the Hogs chant on the air for everyone with country around. Not embarrassed. No shame at all. No shame at all. I'll gladly bet with you again this year to see what your Hogs can do, man. But it's good to see you. Thanks for showing up, brother. All right. So they lose Wendell Green, Alan Flanagan, Zep Jasper. Zep Jasper is eternal. Bringing in Denver Jones from FIU, Chaney Johnson from a non-D1. More on him in a second. Chad Baker from Northwestern Florida State. And then another non-D1 transfer in Adarin Scott. The main freshman coming in for prolific prep, Aiden Holloway. Returning Jalen Williams and Janai Broom, 2 of the most important players in the conference. And I know a lot will argue with me, but they are going to be fantastic. Katie Johnson returns, Dylan Cardwell, and Chris Moore, along with Trey Donaldson, who should be in for a bigger role for sure. Janai Broom's fucking awesome, man. I just love Broom. All the man, these guys up transferring, how are they going to handle it? Morehead State, he did well there, but what's he going to do in Auburn? Well, Broom went just bonkers so many times for us. And the thing about Broom is he produces at such a high level. His price is typically high. I don't know what it is about projections and the people that do the optimizer stuff for CBB, but Broom's name just never came up for people, and they just wouldn't roster him. So he kind of fell into our lap often. And normally the posh play of the day, for those of you who are new, the sneak play of the day, it's usually a guard. But Broom 3, 4, 5 times had that role for us, and he had some really, really big games. DVP wise, we weren't afraid to use him. He had some really nice performances in the tournament, especially against Iowa. We had 19 points, 12 rebounds, 5 blocks. I know we had him then. He had I think it was the game against South Carolina. he had like almost 30 real points, ended up having damn near 50 fantasy points, and was 5%. I think the 5% was pretty much just FTN people. And I don't think he's going to be that highly owned again. Super efficient at this level. See what he did in the SEC rankings. Third highest defensive rebounding rate, seventh highest offensive rebounding rate, sixth best shot rate, ninth best usage rate, fourth best block rate, 13th best 2-point percentage, and he drew 4.5, almost 5 fouls per 40, also top 25 in the SEC. Janai Broome is a sicko. Absolutely love him. He's going to have another big year. There's just no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Having a center or a versatile postman like that, you just don't see that very often. He's going to have a really, really good year. Jalen Williams coming back was huge. I thought he was probably done. Jalen Williams had some health issues and some injuries and stuff, but there was a really, really big amount of performances there for a while from Jalen Williams to where, you just couldn't fade that guy. And most people really, they were very slow to come around to him, but he had several games, 17-6, 16-8, 12-13. I mean, he had some really big games there in conference play, and he really didn't turn it around. He was kind of like a reverse non-con hero and turned into a con hero. When healthy, man, his usage was high and he performed really well. And he had a nice game against Houston that Auburn lost. He was very, very good against them. Had a big game coming into it against Alabama, in which they lost in overtime, but that was a good turning point game. And Jalen Williams returning, he's going to be a very solid option as well. Looking at it, 36% three-point shooter on volume. He will get more work as well, especially with Wendell Green out of the picture. Both of those guys, absolutely fantastic. Chaney Johnson, Auburn saw him in a game. Let's see if it's on here. It was a game in exhibition, and Chaney Johnson lit Auburn up. He was a scoring machine. So kind of excited to see what kind of role he could have, maybe fill in some of that Wendell Green usage. Obviously, there's still Chaney Johnson, who's a high usage, high shot rate guy who's never met a shot he didn't like. So him and Chaney Johnson definitely going to have those scoring opportunities on the perimeter. Noah Flanagan as well. The 5-star freshman they bring in, Aiden Holloway, legit shooter, going to be really good fit there with Broome on the post. That's going to be a real nice pairing. And then Denver Jones coming in from FIU, who's just 20 point per game scorer, going to also replace a lot of that Wendell Green usage. I think you're talking about a guy who may go overlooked by the masses, shot 37% from long range. Won't probably give us too much in terms of peripherals, but definitely going to score and score often. I like this Auburn team. I also like Trey Donaldson. I do feel like he's, maybe been recruited over a little bit by the transfer portal. And he might not have the shots needed to really make an impact, but he's definitely a guy where if an injury happens or say Denver Jones just doesn't work out, comes to the SEC and struggles, Trey Donaldson could be a guy that we're talking about, in late January as a must-play fantasy option. So love Auburn. I think they're going to be solid. This is a very underrated team to me. Broome's just not getting the looks, the love, the chatter that he really deserves. All right, moving on to the Missouri Tigers, year 2 for Dennis Gates. Kobe Brown, the just Superman of Missouri DFS basketball, incredible player, statistically speaking. Demoy Hodge, who had a fantastic tournament run for us, the last 3 or 4 games of the season, Demoy Hodge had his turn as the posh play of the day. Gonna miss him. DeAndre Golston, Isaiah Mosley, who I loved when he played, Trey Gomillion, and Mo Diarra. That is a ton to lose, but they do bring in Connor Vanover from Oral Roberts, I guess. Caleb Grill from Iowa State, John Tane from Colorado State, Tamar Bates from Indiana, and then Kurt Williams from John A. Logan, non-D1, and then a couple of freshmen here in Trent Pierce and Jordan Butler. Returners, Nick Honor, who just has not been able to pick up where he left off years ago from Fordham. Really just haven't been able to see him step into a level where I can feel comfortable rostering him these days. Noah Carter, who is going to be a DFS darling because I just feel like he's going to be underpriced as usual. Sean East, who I love, super inefficient last year, but man, he is somebody who can put up fantasy points in a hurry. I think, there are enough guys here to be concerned to a degree with Tamar Bates coming in, Caleb Grill coming in, Tanya. But I think East has an opportunity to probably start or play heavy minutes at the very least. Aiden Shaw, Caleb Brown also back. So kind of a weirder roster that Gates is working with here. Lost a lot of pieces, but they have that veteran presence on the perimeter and Honor and East, and those two should really play an absolute lot of minutes. I'd love to see Tamar Bates kind of grow into a bigger role. Showed flashes at times with the Hoosiers, but there was just too many, kind of me first players at Indiana. Didn't work out for Bates too much. John Tanya is a sneaky play at Colorado State. He was very productive there. 15 points, 5 rebounds, 39% three-point shooter. He kind of did that quietly, considering, played with Isaiah Stevens. So I like him in this role, and I think that Vanover will struggle because last time he was in the SEC, he couldn't defend the pick and roll. He still can't defend the pick and roll. I don't know how many minutes he can play in conference games. So we'll see, but I just don't see that working out very well. Love to be wrong. He was great at Oral Roberts. He was solid at Cal, but in the SEC, for whatever reason, he just hasn't been able to put that together just yet. And I don't foresee that changing this season. But I could certainly be wrong. Stranger things have happened, right? Let's see. No. One thing I don't like about Stat Broadcast is the fact that you can't just select. Okay, here we go. I don't have the box score for them. So I think Missouri will be a team that probably takes a step back this year, certainly, but they're going to have plenty of viability when it comes to fantasy purposes, just because of the way that Gates runs his system. And as long as he has a scoring guard or two, he's going to be able to generate some viability for us. And I think that'll be John Tanya, Sean East, and maybe Caleb Grill, since he shot about 37% last year. I do think Noah Carter is going to shoot way too much, but that just might make him a good option overall. All right, next team on the slate here, we're going to talk about ISD on the slate. I'm already ready for DFS slates. The Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia just played tonight. Let's see if we can get the goods on them. They played Eastern Kentucky. Okay. I don't have that password. No. Okay. There's a passcode for that one, which I do have a way in on those passwords, by the way. But I'm not going to make you guys wait while I do that. Anyways, they're losing Terry Roberts, loved him. Cario Oquendo to Oregon, Braylon Bridges, Kyron Lindsey, and Madrez McBride. Noah Tomlinson from Niagara, who I actually like quite a bit. Jalen Deloche from VCU. Russell Tashua from South Florida. RJ Melendez from Illinois. And then they bring in a bunch of freshmen. Blue Kane from the IMG Academy. Silas Damari, Dylan James, and Mari Jordan. Justin Hill returns. Jabri Abdur-Rahim, technically Matthew Alexander Moncrief, even though he didn't get a start. And Frank Anselm. All returning for this team. Losing the guard, that's Terry Roberts, who is a really good scorer, and Oquendo, who's a volume shooter, leaves a lot of usage available for others. There's going to be a guard or two that steps into a much bigger role for this program and is definitely going to be viable for fantasy purposes. We just have to see how that pecking order ends up working out. I want to see if I can quickly pull up a box here. They scored 99, but I don't think I can get a box quick enough. So I'll have to wait on that. Anyways, the Thomason kid is the more intriguing for me, coming in from Niagara. I bet a lot of Niagara games last year. They always had favorable lines. almost a 20-point per game scorer, 39% three-point shooter, averaged about 4 assists, about 4 rebounds. Really like him on a team to take that Terry Roberts usage and maybe even do it better than Roberts did. So I really feel positive about him. Justin Hill returning is also going to play a lot of minutes. Not the best shooter, was under 30% last year, but we saw him take a larger role when injuries happened to guys like Roberts. Abdur Rahim shot almost 39%. He took a step forward. I think we could further see him do well. RJ Melendez is the one that is the more intriguing, I think, of all the transfers that come to them from Illinois. We have seen guys transfer out of Illinois and really kind of blossom in other places. Melendez is one that I think could do really, really well. Melendez had almost a double-double tonight for what it's worth. So people all over Twitter tonight. The RJ Melendez game happened. Okay, here we go. You could tell I was looking for something while talking, right? All right, RJ Melendez, 21 points, 8 rebounds, solid. Noah Tomlinson, 15 and 4. The freshman, Silas Damari, 12 points, 5 assists. Blue Kane had 12. Jabri Abdur-Rahim, 12. Russell Tishwa had a double-double of 10 and 10. They play Oregon in Vegas on Monday. I love me some Noah Tomlinson, and I just like what I see with him. But him and Melendez going to be pulling a lot of the heavy-duty stuff. Looks like Silas Damari and Blue Kane as freshmen should get some minutes. I've seen a lot of chatter for Blue Kane. There were a lot of other programs that were interested in him. Maybe forced into some bigger minutes than expected. Somebody who can shoot. That's something this Georgia team was really lacking last year was premium shooting and consistent shooting. They had volume guys, but they didn't have anyone with the efficiency level really needed there. So with this influx of transfers and freshmen, we'll see. I think looking at this roster, it definitely lacks what I would call an alpha or a go-to. For me, it's Thomason from Niagara. I think he just fits that role really well with a bunch of role players around him. It wouldn't shock me if RJ Melendez became the alpha, though, no doubt. All right, next team, Vanderbilt. Let's talk about Vandy. The Commodores, this is already Stackhouse's 5th year, if you can believe that. Pretty wild stuff. No Liam Robbins. Jordan Wright's gone to LSU. We just talked about Miles Stute, Trey Thomas, and Quentin Melora Brown. They bring in Evan Taylor from Lehigh, Tassos Kamateros from South Dakota, and Van Allen Lubin from Notre Dame. Looking at the returners, Ezra Mannion, Tyron Lawrence, Colin Smith, Paul Lewis, Lee Dort. Those are the primary returners, the ones to know. Van Allen Lubin, he has a ton of upside, man. I'm kind of sad to see that he didn't stay in Notre Dame because I think he would have been a real nice piece there for the new coaching staff. But look for him to step into a big-time role for this Vanderbilt program. Can they get some more out of Colin Smith, who was a better-than-advertised shooter, very raw? Evan Taylor comes in as a grad, 14-point-per-game scorer, shot 43% from long range. Tyron Lawrence will look to improve on his 36% three-point shooting. And Ezra Mannion, who had big games mixed in with horrible games, they're going to rely on him heavily. And they'll need one of the younger, Paul Lewis, Lee Dort, Allen Lubin, Colin Smith, like one or two of those guys is really going to have to make that next step as sophomores. Love it, actually, that they're going to be able to play through some of those mistakes under Stackhouse. Now, we know Stack, he's not afraid to mix up his starting lineup. He's not afraid to bring his best guys off the bench. He does some very unique things with his rotations. But I like the pieces on this Vandy team, and I think we're going to be able to utilize them a lot more than people probably realize for DFS purposes. And I think they'll all be like relatively low priced as well, which was the case a lot last year. Even the Kamataros kid there was technically a 4-5, shot 40% from long range, can kind of space, make life difficult for slow-footed defenders. Somebody who could do well, but the SEC is not the Summit League. So that's going to be tough. And for Taylor as well, going from the Patriots to the SEC, those are big jumps. That's kind of why I like Van Allen Lubin, because he's used to that competition and he just drips upside and high development. I think he could be the key to this Vanderbilt team this year. And like Lee Dort, stepping into big minutes. I think Lindor has a chance to be really quite good as well. All right, next team on our list is Ole Miss, the Rebels. Going through some changes here. Chris Beard taking over the reins. Say what you will again about Chris Beard as well, but the man can coach, right? Gonna have to start with a completely changed over roster. Day Ruffin, Miles Burns, Emery Abram, Jay McInnes, Robert Allen, and James White are all out the door. He does have a couple of returners. Matthew Morrell, probably none more important than him. Jamin Brakefield, who's also quite important. TJ Caldwell. Those are the three main, but they went to the portal and brought in a ton of guys. Brandon Murray from Georgetown, Mo Cisse from Oklahoma State, Alan Flanagan from Auburn, Jalen Murphy from St. Peter's, Jamarian Sharp from Western Kentucky, and Austin Nunez from Arizona State. Now, Brandon Murray and Mo Cisse, good chance they don't get the waivers needed to be available for the season. They are non-grad, multi-team transfers. There could be a real struggle there to get them eligible. But there are some really nice pieces here on this Ole Miss roster. Jalen Murray, lesser known from that St. Mary's team, but 12.5 points per game, 36% three-point shooter. Alan Flanagan, was injured, but when he was on for Auburn, he was very good. Played out of position a lot for them, made him very uncomfortable. His turnover rate was a little higher than you'd like, but playing off ball, Flanny has a lot of upside. And Austin Nunez, as a role player, last year coming from ASU, could be a dead-eye three-point shooter with more, minutes, more volume. He's definitely somebody to look at. TJ Caldwell was good for us for DFS purposes from a value standpoint. And Matthew Morrell, if Brandon Murray, that is, isn't able to go or isn't able to get cleared, Matthew Morrell is looking at another high usage year where he's going to be a strong fantasy performer just because of that volume, and playing for Chris Beard, that's only going to help him further. And Morrell was an all SEC player last year. So under Beard, I would expect him to make a big step up. And the Morrell-Flanagan backcourt isn't so bad. That's actually a pretty decent group to work with for Beard, with Brakefield, who showed massive improvements last year, Caldwell, who has that upside. I think they're going to be just fine. If they don't get Mo Cisse the waiver, they'll probably run a rotating group in the post, and it's going to kill fantasy viability there. This is a team I'm really just going to be looking at the guards. But we'll see how it works out. Never count out Chris Beard, right? Like, he is a very, very good coach. Like I said, say what you will about what's happened off the court. On the court, he's able to get it done, turn in these really strong groups. And, Texas Longhorns, that we can't say for sure how that would have gone had he stayed or not. But I'm willing to bet he would have been a second weekend coach with that program with consistency. With Ole Miss, it's going to take a little bit more time. They've certainly showed an ability to perform and get talent, but it's going to be a work in progress here at first. But there's just a handful of coaches that I refuse to count out, and he's definitely one of them. All right, next up on here, and I think the last team for us to talk about, the South Carolina Gamecocks with Lamont Paris, who I love. No Gigi Jackson, who was rather inefficient last year, but I love his game. Hayden Brown and Chico Carter both gone. They bring in Talon Cooper from Minnesota, BJ Mack from Wofford, Stephen Clark from Citadel, which seems to be a pipeline for them, Miles Stute, who comes in from Vanderbilt, and a couple of freshmen, Colin Murray Boyles and Arden Conyers. The returners, or the primary ones, Michi Johnson, who should be in for a big year, Jacoby Wright, Zachary Davis, Benjamin Bosmans-Verdonk, and Josh Gray. They get Ibrima Deba back from missing the entire season last year due to injury. Deba was a jack of all trades for Coastal Carolina, actually had more than a few double-doubles and flirted with a triple-double several occasions. I really like Deba in this system, somebody kind of like a sneakier option, veteran presence to kind of do what they need, defend a little bit, make some shots, but he's definitely a perfect fit for this team. Michi Johnson, I think this is major. I mean, he already had a breakout season, but I think he steps forward another, big amount. As far as his scoring goes, you look at what he was able to do last year, 12.5 points. I think we see him score somewhere between 15 and 16 on this roster. They bring in Mack and Clark, who both averaged over 16 in their programs, which are Citadel and Wofford, but they're going to take a step back a little bit in terms of that scoring production, because I think the guards here between Cooper, Stute, and Michi Johnson are going to do a lot of that heavy lifting. And Jacoby Wright also had some really nice performances last year. He can score really, really well when given the opportunity. I think Jacoby Wright's not to be slept on, and somebody who's going to be maybe even more valuable than a player like Talon Cooper, because if they bring Wright off the bench, but still play him 20, 25 minutes, I think that could only help him as a second unit scorer. That's kind of like a more efficient Katie Johnson in that regard. Zachary Davis, youngster with a lot of upside as well. Expect some big minutes for him. We'll see how that goes. But I'm really looking forward to Deba and think that he's going to have that viability there. BJ Mack coming in, he's somebody that Paris says is going to be a big part of the front court rotation. They're going to make him a really high usage big. He's going to facilitate some. The quote from Paris was his usage rate is going to be incredibly high. You love hearing that. Somebody like Mac who can step out and hit threes and can also bang down low. They also have the Stephen Clark kid who can do more of the same, guard, positions 3, 4, and 5. So they've got some more versatility with their bigs. They're not kind of stuck with plotters down low. I like Josh Gray a lot. He had a huge few, like 3 or 4 towards the end of the season, big rebounding games, 12 plus rebounds. But looking at the forwards they brought in, it seems like he'll probably see a minutes decrease, and they especially have those bigs coming in as freshmen that will probably get some minutes as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of cannibalization of the front court outside of Mac. Clark will be fine, but I don't think he's going to put up the numbers he did at Citadel. I think we're talking BJ Mack, we're talking Michi Johnson, and we're talking Jacoby Wright, and then everybody else will have games where they're usable or viable, but for the most part, they won't consistently be real fantasy options for us. But South Carolina, a lot of people will automatically think, hey, it's one of the worst teams in the conference. They're not going to be usable for DFS purposes, and that's simply not true. They might lose a lot, but they're going to definitely put up some 5, 6x scores, no doubt about it. All right, so that's the SEC in a nutshell, very quickly breaking that down. I do want to talk about my awards, and I'm going to do some tweets or like small clips where I kind of rehash and give my predictions before the season starts. All that will come out Sunday night for the most part. For me, I think the winners of the SEC as a whole are the Tennessee Volunteers. I'm putting myself back on Rick Barnes as much as I shouldn't. I think we start with Coach of the Year predictions here, and I think that Rick Barnes is absolutely in consideration for that. But what I like and what I'm looking at is a very underrated Florida Gators team. And I think Coach Golden may win Player of the Year here for this Gator squad that was a paltry 16-17 last year, 99 in conference. I think they become a 20-25 win team. Golden's your Coach of the Year. Newcomer of the Year, there's a ton. You could take any of those freshmen from Kentucky. You could take some of these guys from, that are transferring into Auburn and Arkansas, and it's only been one game, so maybe I'm falling in love here. But I thought Dalton Connect was going to be, if North Carolina went out and got him, was going to be a big-time program changer and take them to make them an opportunity to be in the Final Four because of Baycott, RJ Davis could do. Can you imagine Connect with those guys? But playing for Tennessee, he's going to be a big-time scorer. If Ziegler can't be the same, if Escobe's, not able to stay healthy, look out for Dalton Connect. He's your newcomer of the year for the SEC, very confidently as well. Defensive player of the year. See a lot of publications talking about Triple J just because of how great he's been on that side of the ball. He's also, of course, had some health issues there, so that's been tough. For me, I think we have to look at how well Janai Broom does in the post as a shot blocker, rim protector. I think he could have a phenomenal season and maybe even average 3 real blocks per game. So I think Broom's got to be consideration for the player of the year on the defensive side. And then overall, the player of the year in the SEC, somebody who I think is maybe not a surefire bet to win the award, but certainly going to, for DFS purposes, put himself in a position to endear himself to all of us, is Aaron Estrada of Alabama. Now, I know a lot of people are picking Wade Taylor for that, and he's good. He's going to be fine, but wait until you see what Estrada does for this Alabama program. It's going to be stupid. Absolutely stupid. Breakout player of the year, someone I really like to talk about, and it's kind of lazy on my part, but Riley Kugel of Florida, starting from day one, playing 35 minutes a game. There's a very good opportunity. We only have him for this year, and he's going to go to the NBA route after because he's going to do really well. This Florida team's being slept on. Plain and simple, the Florida Gators, you gotta really watch out for this program. They're going to be just very, very good. And then I think as far as like sleeper teams or, teams that aren't getting the amount of love as other programs in this conference, whether that's right or wrong, is also the Florida Gators. So that is the SEC for you guys. Oh yeah, all conference team too. Janai Broom, obviously, right? Wade Taylor, Dalton Connect, who's just too damn good. Riley Kugel, and Aaron Estrada. I don't care about positions, forwards, guards. Just give me the 5 best guys, and I'll roll them out there. So that's my conference first team. All right, so that is it for the SEC. Now we're gonna wrap these previews up tomorrow, and it's going to be mid-major / low-major teams that we should be paying attention to for DFS, fantasy, prop betting purposes. These are going to be teams like Austin P, Memphis, some of these teams that maybe don't get talked about as much. Obviously Memphis does, but the non P5 teams could be some A10, some AAC, maybe Sunbelt. Like I've got about 9 or 10 teams and about 20 players that I really want to talk about and kind of go in detail with you guys on. So that'll be tomorrow's show. Then we'll switch gears. We'll be off for a day. We'll be back Thursday night, CFB Super Show, breaking down the main slate. Then we'll be back Saturday morning, live before lock. And then Sunday night, into that first slate on Monday, November 6th, we'll be doing our first CBB breakdown of the season in full, game by game breakdown. You will not want to miss that. 3 shows per week breaking down college basketball slates. Those are typically going to be Monday night, Tuesday nights, and Friday night. And then we'll still have the football shows Thursday night and Saturday morning. It's about to get real fun around here. Thank you guys for those that continue to support the show. Thanks for commenting, dropping likes, subscribing to the FTN Network. It helps us so much. We're working hard out here as much as we can to provide you with the best content in the industry. I'll be back tomorrow night at the same time, same place. Catch y'all later.